The biggest, most well-known person when it comes to the stock market has FOMO. And what we are talking about is we are talking about Warren Buffett and the purchases that he's been making and the extreme amount of money that he is putting into the market right now. So in this video, we're going to talk about some of the positions that he's added. We're going to talk about exactly how much he has added in these positions. And then we're actually going to go into depth on a few of these and take a look at where they were at around when he was purchasing and where the stock price is at right now, and then some of his thoughts behind these stocks. So if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you subscribe. Before we get into this, I want to talk a little bit about what I mean. So Warren Buffett has FOMO, right? The fear of missing out. And what's crazy is, right, Warren Buffett is thinking the opposite, and he's a contrarian type of investor. So when he sees stocks go lower, he's actually afraid for the first time in a few years that he's going to miss out on this basically dip and not catch the upswing. He talks about in an interview that basically he missed out on all of 2020. He missed out on that huge dip and that run up that he could have capitalized on, and he feels like this opportunity, this is the time for him to get in, spend a lot of money, make a lot of money if things recover quickly, and over the long term, still, capitalize on this low point in history. So he has a lot of fear about missing out on a potential run up that could happen really quickly like it did in 2020. So it's really interesting and to pay attention to the moves that he's making and his thought process when it comes to things like that. So with that, let's go ahead and jump into the stocks that Warren Buffett has added to his portfolio over the last quarter. And first up here, we have Chevron. So Chevron, they went from a stake of 4.5 billion at the end of 2021 to 25.9 billion in the end of March. And this was one of their biggest adds, and it's clear why. So this next line that I have highlighted down here, so they have reported earning $6.3 billion in the first quarter of 2022, and that's up from 1.4 billion in the same quarter last year. So in my opinion, this is kind of an interesting one. We'll get into it a little bit more looking at the stock chart, but I've never really loved oil companies because they're very cyclical, and this feels like almost buying a Chevron when it's when all the money's being pumped into it. So overall, we'll again take a look at the chart and we'll see that Warren Buffett probably timed this almost perfectly, but normally this is a stock that I personally would not buy a ton of. So next up here we have Occidental Petroleum, which is the same type of deal. So you've got a petroleum company, another oil company, and Berkshire held 136.4 million shares at the end of March and now holds 143 million shares. So up a little bit there, giving the company a 15% stake in the Texas-based oil and gas producer worth about 9.7 billion. So smaller than Chevron, but Occidental is also a smaller company, obviously, than Chevron. Up here, we have some more interesting picks. So Warren Buffett is a big believer in banks. So he added to Citigroup, Ally, and then Markel. So Citigroup, he added so it was basically he brought his position up to $3 billion by the end of March, while adding smaller stakes in Markel and Ally of 620 and 390 million respectively. So smaller kind of in the bank positions. I believe he did also sell out of Wells Fargo, which is kind of an interesting play. I'm kind of surprised he didn't add Bank of America, because Bank of America has been dipping a lot, or JP Morgan. He's never really bought a lot of JP Morgan, but Bank of America he's a big believer in, and I'm kind of surprised he didn't add to that position. The only reason I can think of, I'd have to look at his portfolio, is he could be very close to that 10% mark where he'd have to start reporting with the SEC. Next up here is a stock I personally also owned. Owned actually. I did sell out of my position once the news was announced, but basically Warren Buffett, someone in his company originally bought Activision Blizzard before Microsoft announced that they were going to purchase it for $95 a share. But since then, Warren Buffett, and he talked about this in his annual meeting, but they see this as kind of an arbitrage play, because right now Activision Blizzard, and again we'll look at the chart on this stock, but it's been sitting really low, and it still has like a 15 to 20% upside in the stock, which is kind of crazy. especially when you think about Microsoft having a huge cash balance. So they should have no problem buying Activision Blizzard. It's more a matter of, one, does it get shut down by the SEC, or two, does something happen where Microsoft wants to back out, basically, is what it comes down to. So I really don't see either of those happening, but that's just my personal opinion, and it seems like Warren Buffett thinks the same, because Berkshire Hathaway now holds 64.3 million shares, up from 14.7 million. So they bought a significant amount of shares and added a lot to that position, because a 15% return for Warren Buffett, really for anyone, is an excellent return. But Warren Buffett, since he's got so much money, obviously a 15% return is a little bit harder to come by. He can't invest in a lot of these smaller growth stocks. This is actually one of his most boring ads, is Apple. He added, just a small 3 million shares, nothing crazy, nothing really crazy to talk about here. I'm kind of surprised he added to this. His cost basis before this had to be below 50, because I know he bought below 100 before they had the 5-to-1 split. So or 4-to-1, 5-to-1, whatever it was a couple years ago. But basically, he had to have had a really small cost basis. And it's kind of surprising that would add to Apple and kind of bring his cost basis up. But he must still have a lot of belief in the company. HP is the next one that we have up here. We'll talk a little bit about this one as well, but they reportedly in April that they purchased almost 121 million shares of HP, giving it more than 11% stake in the company. At the end of March, Berkshire held 104.5 million shares, worth 3.8 billion. So obviously another big position there. This one's very interesting to me as well. We'll take a look at the stock chart. I'm not really sure what his thought process is with HP. I definitely think it's a good company, but it's not one that I see a huge amount of growth with. And it hasn't really fallen a whole lot. So we're going to take a closer look at that one as well. And then we got a few smaller ones down here. So Paramount Global, they own MTV, Nickelodeon, CBS. This is a new position for him, so he put in $2.6 billion. And then I'm not even sure how to pronounce this one, but Celanese, maybe Corp. Again, another new position for 1.1 billion. So those are a lot of the major positions that he added. Like I said, there's a couple of positions that he also reduced, but these are the ones that we are going to take a look at. We're going to specifically take a look at Chevron, Activision Blizzard, and HP here up next. So as we just got done talking about, Chevron is one of the purchases that Warren Buffett made during the last quarter, and the quarter was ending in March. So what we can see, and what I would have to guess, is that he added sometime between basically January or February would be my guess of when he added, because there's this huge run up in here, and this might have came on the back of earnings. But I would be surprised if Warren Buffett were to add, after that run up. If he did, then he's basically break even. But my guess would be that he added somewhere in January and February, probably, saw the writing on the wall, saw everything that was happening with oil prices, and basically didn't see him getting any better. And then also saw everything happening in Ukraine and Russia, and probably started adding a position. And maybe he still added through this run up, but overall, still would be a great purchase no matter kind of how he played it here. The other big thing is they have a 3.22% dividend, and if he added down here, he'd have an even higher yield than that. So overall, this seems to be a good purchase. Personally, again, I don't really love oil companies. They seem very cyclical. You can see a lot of, normally cyclicality in kind of the market. I mean, look in here, right? They ran up, jumped back down, ran up, jumped back down, ran up, jumped back down. So overall, not a play that I necessarily love, but it's still an interesting play. And Chevron is one of the biggest in the industry. So you really can't go wrong adding, large companies like this. Next up here, we have Activision Blizzard. So this is the one that I talked about that I purchased A while back. I purchased it. Basically, I didn't even think anything about an acquisition possibility, but I thought, that the stock was being down. It was in the 50s, and I just started adding a few shares, and then all of a sudden Microsoft said we're going to purchase the company, and it shot up like a rocket. That's what we're seeing in here. So Activision, basically Berkshire Hathaway, someone at their fund who manages a smaller amount of money, added during that time. And then after that, Warren Buffett stepped in and basically saw kind of the writing on the wall and thought, hey, this is actually a good arbitrage play. The stock is sitting down quite low. Like we mentioned, Microsoft is planning on buying out all the shares at $95. And right now the stock is sitting well below that. So he sees it as an easy capitalization on that difference there. Basically, what is the likelihood of the market right now is pricing in that there's at least some likelihood of this deal falling through, and Warren Buffett tends to disagree. So overall, this is an easy add, and personally, I've actually thought about re-adding a position in Activision Blizzard just because I kind of agree with him. I think there's a lot of guarantee in it, and honestly, the stock previously, if we go back a few years, was around $100. So even purchasing now, if the stock ends up recovering, even if the deal falls through and current management and things stay in place, then we could still see the stock recover to around $100, and you'd still be up on your position. So overall, I still kind of like this one, but I haven't re-added into my position yet. HP is the last one we're going to take a look at here, and this is the one that confuses me the most because it doesn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. There's a couple things that I'll point out here that I guess I could see Warren Buffett looking at, and those specifically are the dividend. So it's got a 2.72 dividend yield right now, and then the PE ratio. So the PE ratio is at 6.54, but HP is a company that always trades low, and basically has for a very long time traded at a low PE ratio. And I don't really know why. It seems like a very stable business, but they just kind of, sit very low and don't really have a whole lot of innovation. They kind of just keep doing their thing, but have a very good, business model. So Warren Buffett, right, they talk about him adding somewhere, I believe it was, let's jump down and just verify real quick. HP, so in early April, basically that's when they reported that they had added a position. So if we jump back over here, February, March, April, so early April, he'd be adding maybe at the low here of around $35, and the stock has kind of just traded sideways, the entire time. And if we jump back looking at the last 5 years, the stock was significantly lower. So it really hasn't experienced as much in the last year or so of a pullback as a lot of these other companies. So it's kind of curious, to think about, right? A lot of this big dip has started in August, September of last year, and HP is one that really hasn't been affected by it. It's actually gone up since then. So, and then basically traded sideways since the start of the year. So this one kind of catches me off guard. I'm not sure what he sees in it, but it's going to be interesting to see how this one plays out. Personally, I don't think I'm going to add a position. I just don't, foresee anything huge coming from this, but you never know. Warren Buffett has a good track record of being right. So overall, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think about these 3 stocks or any of the stocks that Warren Buffett's adding. I'd be interested to hear your opinion down in the comments section. So if you like the video, make sure you drop a like down below. And if you want to see more videos like this one, make sure you hit that sub button. And as always, have a wonderful rest of your day.